Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of the Monsters Den. In the co-captain's chair, Mr. Chris Allo. What's happening, man?
Hey, Pete. What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for having me on, Pete.
Pleasure having you. And we're doing Bigfoot films or Sasquatch type creatures. We got a double feature for everybody today. One film from 72, one film from 1980. So the 1972 film is The Legend of Boggy Creek, which is newly remastered and reissued on Blu-ray. Chris and I both watched this just recently. This was actually put together by Pamela Pierce Barcelou, who is the daughter of the original director and producer Charles Pierce. So she's kind of in charge of running the whole show for the Legend of Boggy Creek and the series. So there's that. And then a little film that I had never heard about till Chris lent it to me, Night of the Demon from 1980. And this is an interesting film. So we're going to tackle one at a time here. So first, let's talk about The Legend of Boggy Creek. So as you can see, it's labeled as a true story. And when they originally released this back in the 70s, this was kind of like, what do you call it? Almost like a pseudo documentary, so to speak. Like something like this kind of predates like the Blair Witch Project, if you can imagine that sort of kind of like documentary style, right? And I remember seeing this on TV like back in the day and thinking it's pretty realistic and pretty creepy. And I've always been into Bigfoot. I've always liked, the Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Abominable Snowman type of thing. I'm always into, UFOs and all that kind of crap. So this type of thing always really intrigued me. But I remember, whether you rented it or watched it on YouTube or watched it on TV, the quality of this was always really dark and grainy and fuzzy. And, I remember always thinking, okay, well, when they did show the Bigfoot, he looked kind of cheesy, but they didn't show him much. But yet half the time you're like, all I hear are crickets and frogs and I see dark, right? It just was really hard to... I don't know. I always had mixed feelings about this film, but I always kind of enjoyed it and always wondered, it's like, wow, I wonder if that looked a little more professional. Because I don't even know what the budget they had for this was. Probably next to nothing, right? I think
it was $10.
Probably. Probably. It takes place in Arkansas, right? So it's a little tiny town called Folk, Arkansas. It's right on the border of Texas. And
which is they keep showing like how close they are to Texarkana, which of course this is from Charles B. Pierce, who did The Town That Dreaded Sundown, which takes place in Texarkana.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I have that too. I just picked that up as well. But and so as legend has it, there's this kind of giant furry hairy creature who lurks in the swamps around this creek called Boggy Creek. And so they kind of take you through like a couple, they do these little interviews with people in the town. The older folks don't really believe anything, right? But a lot of the younger people have seen this creature, the side of the road, coming up to their house or wherever they might be. And so what they do is they kind of recreate a lot of these little stories and sightings, and then they're basically like, oh, for 8 years, and it's all told, it's like narrated. So like there's a little kid who saw the creature numerous times when he was a child, and he is like coming back to the town later, many years later as an adult, and he's thinking back about all the people that he talked to who had seen the creature and the experiences he himself had. But they talk about like an 8-year break where nobody saw the creature after apparently he was like shot at some point. So kind of like the way the kid tells it now, an adult, it's like, well, I think, in the past, the creature never really bothered anybody much. We'd see him, but he never bothered anybody much. But I think we kind of like pissed him off, so to speak, that last time around. And now he's coming back and he's, a little more interested in meddling about our business. So like the second half of the film is where things really take off, I think, where it gets a little creepier, more occurrences of the creature getting aggressive towards, the townspeople, and specifically like this one house in general, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, You summed it up perfectly, Pete. I mean, on the back, it says it's a docudrama, and yesterday when I watched it, I actually said out loud, I'm like, am I watching a movie or is this a documentary? Because it really has that sort of feel where you're like, well, wait a second. And early on in the beginning, they sort of say how the people that are in the movie are playing themselves. And of course, they're in their own clothes, in their own, environments, their own houses. I mean, this movie probably cost literally $10, other than, probably only the film to shoot on is probably the only expense. But it works. It's, I've seen just like you. I always loved the Bigfoots and Bermuda Triangle, all that sort of stuff. And it's still genuinely pretty creepy. I mean, the whole movie is women and young girls shrieking at the top of their lungs while there's a guy in a gorilla suit or a bear suit, like just in the back of the frame, and the women are screaming their heads off, and guys are taking shots at it, and I'm watching it going, wow, this movie's rated G. I'm like, this has got to be the scariest rated G movie ever. I mean, I know most of the Planet of the Apes movies were rated G, but to me, this is far scarier than any of the Apes movies, because it is realistic other than the guy in the gorilla suit, which there's really only one shot where you kind of see him. And I mean, I didn't bother to pause it last night, but I'm like, yeah, it looks like a gorilla face. It looks like he's wearing a full, but it works because he's in the shadows most of the time. He's in the background, but in the trees. But I just kept thinking, Jesus, little kids in 1972 must have been, I would think scared. And this movie was a huge hit. They made a sequel. There is a second disc on there, which talks about the true story of Boggy Creek, which I didn't get a chance to watch. I mean, the true story is Charles B. Pierce, he made a lot of money, so much so he made another movie called The Return of Boggy Creek, which I don't think I've ever seen.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. But it's a fun little creepy, Bigfoot movie. There's no gore, there's no kills, so if there's no nudity or sex. So if you're going into it for that, this is not the movie for you. But it's definitely a snapshot in time. And I'm like, when I'm watching, I'm like, geez, some of these people lived pretty rough in 1972.
Sleeping on the floor
no running water in the house, no electric. They've got screens in the bathroom, but there's all giant holes in them. I'm like, oh my God.
I don't know. I guess that's how they do it down in Arkansas. And I'll tell you something else. Like all the men in this film, they all own guns. Not one of them could hit the broadside of a barn, right?
So all of them have guns except the one guy who really needed it, like the last family. And I'm like, he's running around with like 3 women. And then the friend comes, the 2 friends.
Yep. And
thankfully they have one rifle. I'm like, what are these, the only people in the South without like 10 guns? And then my favorite part was they go and tell the sheriff. And what does the sheriff do? He comes by the house. He drops off a shotgun and a bag of shotgun shells. He's like, if you need me, call me. Here's a gun. I'm like, what? Like, that's it.
And all the flashlights they use in this film don't light up anything.
Nothing.
Right? Nothing. But I will say, a lot of the camera work is done in the point of view of the creature. So when he's like ambling about the house or walking up and creeping around the windows, it's actually pretty unsettling because you hear him breathing. And when he does his scream thing, that's the best part of the movie because the creature scream is really, really eerie. And I like that a lot. And I agree. There's one brief scene towards the end where they show his face and it looks pretty bad. But the rest of the film, they show him from, like maybe 10 feet away ambling through the woods. And, he's got the long hair all over, but it's all in shadow.
It's almost like dreadlock. Yeah. It works. Yeah. It totally works. Seeing it, it's probably been, I want to say maybe 10 years. I think I got a bootleg DVD of it in the garage. And just like you said earlier, man, the old versions look like crap.
Yeah.
So much so, sometimes people say, oh, well, the older, crappier versions help it. Well, no, because in this case, I mean, the older versions of Boggy Creek, like you were like, is something moving? Is that the creature? You could never see it. Now, because it's so cleaned up, you can actually see, oh yeah, there it is moving in the background.
Yeah. And the cinematography, like the whole first probably 10 minutes of the film is just gorgeous. I mean, it basically just, the cameraman just going through all the different locales in this area of Arkansas, and you see the swamps, and you got the beavers swimming around, and you got the alligators, and you got going through the woods and the trees, and it's just absolutely gorgeous, and the colors really pop. I was like, the first 10-15 minutes of the film, I was like, before they even get into the gist of everything, I'm like, wow, this film, they did a great job on this restoration. I mean, just bright colors, and look, it's as if you walk out into your backyard and just walk into the woods, right?
Absolutely. And there's some great aerial shots, and I'm going, well, shit, today, you would just use a drone. I'm like, but back then, I'm like, they had to rent a helicopter and send somebody up to get all these awesome shots.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of really good looking shots of nature and wildlife, and really, they do, you speak to some of the local townspeople, and you're like, oh God, some of these people must have a third grade education. Holy smokes. and most of them look like they have summer teeth, some are here and some are there.
Yeah.
But the whole thing as a package, it definitely works. And it still blows my mind that it was a rated G movie.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's it holds up pretty well. And so if anybody hasn't seen this, or you have seen it but maybe don't own it and you're interested, just go to www.legendofboggycreek.com, and there you can actually order it directly from what did I say her name was? Pamela Pierce Barcelou. She'll actually, when you go to pay, you'll be paying her directly, and she will actually ship it to you. So, pretty cool to think that the original director's daughter is actually handling all of this. But
totally
nice package. Did a really good job on it, and
looks gorgeous. Looks really, really nice. She did a great job on this, and I would imagine you can't order this from Amazon or deep discount. That's, if you want to buy it, that's the way to see it.
Yeah, exactly. So from there, let's fast forward 8 years, right, for this very interesting little flick called Night of the Demon. Okay, and if you get this DVD from Code Red, you get some of you who are wrestling fans might recognize Mary Kanellis, right? Is that how she says her name?
Yep, that's it.
She was also a Playboy Playmate briefly. She was in WWE. I think where is she now? AEW? I don't know, or is she back in WWE? I don't even know where she is.
I was gonna say she's not in AEW, but she's still doing something like all these wrestlers. They do something. They're probably on the indie circuit somewhere.
Yeah. So she's kind of the host of this this program here, hosted by the lovable Maria Kanellis. Anyway, so this is another tale of a giant Bigfoot, another really low budget film. Although here, whereas in this film, no real killings, no gore, not a lot of, other than the violence that the creature does that, doesn't really affect people directly. They go for the jugular on this one.
Oh, so over the top. It's like, oh my God, how the other one's rated G, how did this get an R? Because it's so gory and so violent, and there's nudity, and let's just say there is Bigfoot raping a woman. I mean, it's just, castration. I mean, it's just, it goes for it. Full frontal male nudity. I mean, this thing has it all, and it's one of those ones where you're like, how did this get an R rating?
Yeah.
If Friday the 13th had to get trimmed, how did this get an R? Because it's so over the top, which is awesome. I mean, first shot in the movie, some dude gets his arm ripped off, and he hits the ground, and for 3 minutes,
you can totally see his arm still sitting there in his shirt, right?
Totally. I mean, listen, it is still a crappy, low budget, low special effects, but the guy gets his arm ripped off by the monster, and then he lies on the ground, and you watch him bleed out for like 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah. Oh,
wow.
that's the thing about this film. Every like big scene, they stretch out to
Yeah.
like 2, 3 minutes. And that scene especially, and again, you know that this is really low budget. You could tell that they had like a kind of a squeegee machine that has the fake blood
Yeah.
going out. So you can see it coming out in waves, right? And it's just like, it starts dribbling out and then it comes out a little faster, then it starts dribbling out from his little stump he's got there. And I'm just like, all right, and the color, it's funny. We've talked a lot on the show in recent months about especially the older films where
Right.
when they put these on Blu-ray, the color of blood is like way brighter than it should be, to the point where it looks like paint or whatever. In this film, the blood looks like it's dark brown, like rusty color. It just it
Sure.
totally doesn't look natural. It looks way too thin. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting how film to film to film, they all use different materials and what have you for the blood. And there is a lot of blood in this film.
Oh, it is a bloodbath for sure.
Yeah.
Just nonstop gore. A couple boobs. You get, like I said, the rape. The plot. Long story short, is kind of ridiculous. There's a college professor who is teaching. I guess he's an anthropologist, and he's teaching a class. And not that far from where they are, there's this legend of these Bigfoot sightings. So for extra credit, he gathers up like 5 or 6 students, and they hike out into the woods to look for Bigfoot, which is completely ridiculous, because they're camped out in the woods, and he's like, oh, well, this is where all those other people got killed, but we're just here in our tents. Nobody's going to stay up and do a watch. We're all just going to go to sleep in our $2.99 JCPenney tents, and hope for the best.
Yeah. And like they all get attacked like little by little throughout the course of this film,
Yeah.
and then they act like nothing ever happened.
Totally, yeah.
One guy gets his back all like savaged up, and then the next scene he's got his shirt back on. He's fine. The other guy gets something happen to his throat. Then they never bring that up again. And I'm like, wait a second, didn't he just get attacked like 2 minutes ago,
yeah.
and now he's okay?
Yeah, the one guy that gets one of the students, spoiler, one of the students gets killed and ripped apart, and there's no body, but I think they find something to realize, oh, okay, the Bigfoot got him. And instead of like, going home like, holy shit, they're like, all right, well, we got to keep going on. It's like, but wait, you guys are college students. Like, what? Yeah, it's so bad. Then they find the lady that Bigfoot raped, and they just help themselves, barge in on her, rip up a grave, and just help themselves to exhuming corpses on her property. I mean, it's just nuts, but fun. Like, and this was probably more well known in England because it was one of the famed video nasties. In America, we had the PMRC in the, 85 that was going after all the rock bands. And over in England in, I don't know, 81 or 82, 83, something like that, they had similar housewives in England that were going after all the violent horror movies. Yeah. And these were, certain movies were considered the worst of the worst and put on the video nasty list. And it was illegal for you to own these copies, like this and Cannibal Holocaust, and there's like 50 or 70, 100, I forget how many. I have a few documentaries on it, and it is pretty interesting stuff. But Night of the Demon was one of them for obvious reasons, because this thing it's gruesome, but at the same time it's so much fun. I mean, it's so ridiculous and over the top. I mean, when you watch it, I don't know how you can't burst out laughing. I mean, at one point, Bigfoot attacks 2 Girl Scouts who are obviously like strippers or something. They're not Girl Scouts, but they're wearing Girl Scout shirts, and he attacks the 2 of them, and they're holding like
these
plastic knives. Plastic knives that they got from Toys R Us, and Bigfoot makes them stab each other. I mean,
he's got one arm of each one of them, and he basically just pulls their arms together so they cross over and stab each other. And the scene goes on for like 3 minutes.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It just keeps, it's like Family Guy. It just keeps, like, right when you think it's going to cut. Nope. It just keeps going. And yeah, the biker scene. Woof! Wow.
Yeah, we won't spoil that one because that's
Yeah.
kind of like that is, you know, and unfortunately they spoil it
Yeah.
on the cover of the
I don't know
DVD, which
why they
makes
did
no
that.
sense, and it's so over the top and ridiculous. But and after, off air, I'll talk to Chris about one of the things I saw in that scene that I was like, wait a second, that totally. And again, it goes down to the low budget and being able to, you know, you don't have any money for the special effects, so you kind of got to do the best that you can, and that scene is so over the top. And then the end of that scene, I'm like looking at it like, wait a second, did I just see that right? So, but I won't spoil it for everybody watching. But yeah, and the costume is ridiculous too.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
almost
It's almost
he's
yeah.
wearing like a brown like sweatsuit with like yak hair all over it.
And if I remember right, like in the front though, there's nothing. So it's almost like it's on his shoulders and his back, but the front is all like, if I remember right, it was all like normal skin tone. He
It's like
did have
normal
stuff
skin
on
tone,
his
a
face.
little brown, and it's almost like. Do you remember? All right, you're a wrestling fan. Do you remember when the Giant
Giant
Gonzalez
Gonzalez.
guy?
Oh my god. Yeah,
Remember,
that's perfect. Yeah.
that's what it looks like with yak
Yes.
hair all
Right.
over. And
But
every
for
time that he
Philly, yeah.
shows up, he moves in slow motion like Lou Ferrigno from the Incredible Hulk TV series.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I wonder if the Bigfoot from $6 Million Man was an influence, but just like, you know, like with longer hair.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, Andre the Giant.
But not nearly as good looking as that.
Right. Yeah, it's a wacky film. I'm just watching this whole thing and I'm like, holy cow,
Yeah.
this is like, you know, not unintentionally bad, but really funny. Really
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. It's a hoot. Yeah. It's one of those ones, even if you only see it once, you'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Because it's just so like, and then there's like a weird cult thing, which they really only touch on a little bit because they're like followers of the Bigfoot. And it's just, it's such a crazy little movie, you know, and when you watch it, it's like, this thing has nudity and over the top gore and violence and blood. And it's so fucking crazy. Like, how did this guy not make more of a splash? Because this is a really rather obscure movie that's hard to get. I mean, I would have loved to get a 35mm print of this for Hudson Horror, but there's no prints out there that I know of. I mean, it's just, and that's probably why we'll hopefully, I would love to see a Blu-ray, but I doubt it because I think that DVD might be sourced from something like maybe a 16mm print or even less, a 3/4-inch video or something. But yeah, it's a really obscure little movie, but really needs to be seen. And that DVD itself has got to be 8-10 years old, I would think.
Yeah, I think it is.
I don't even know if you can still get that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I can't really make it out because the print is so tiny. But, you know, they're talking on the back with it, you know, it's got Maria, right? And it says Maria Kanellis, former WWE Diva, 2008 Diva of the Year Playboy. So this has got to be after that, right? So,
right.
You know, you're probably looking at 2010 or something like that. At least.
Something like that, yeah.
How much did they pay her to do this? I mean, I'm surprised they had
$10. Yeah. They probably had her shoot like 10 of them in a day.
Yeah, probably, right?
And she probably never saw those movies. She's probably like, no, I'm not going to watch this junk.
Yeah.
She's like, just tell me what to say. And
yeah, at one point in the beginning, they have her, she's got like this little kind of like mini thing that she wears that's all hairy, kind of like Bigfoot fur.
Oh, okay.
And it just basically covers her shoulders, right? And then underneath it, she's got like, you know, this effect that's her right there. And she's got like this little tiny outfit, you know, like a little bikini top or whatever. It's like, hey, whatever.
That's funny. That is funny.
So yeah, definitely one of the craziest Bigfoot films I've ever seen. I mean, there's numerous other ones. I've seen another couple here and there, but because there was for a time there making like Bigfoot and Yeti films was like all the crazy.
Oh yeah,
I've seen them pop up quite a bit. But
I mean, without
definitely the most out there.
And I was gonna say, without having seen all of them, I would place bets that this is A, the most out there, and B, the most violent and gory of all the Bigfoot movies. I mean, I couldn't see there being something, you know, as bloody as this.
Yeah, I don't think so. I definitely don't think so. So you got two ends of the spectrum.
I mean, at one point, Oh yeah, and if I remember right, Pete, without giving everything away, doesn't at one point the Bigfoot kill somebody and he rips his intestines out and does the helicopter with it?
I, for- I forgot about
People
that.
go,
Yes.
what? It's like, holy crap, this is insane.
And when he rips the intestines out, it looks just like if you went and cut up a chicken for dinner last night, all the chicken parts.
Totally.
That's exactly what it looked like. And the scene where he's got the guy and he's twirling him around, you could tell it's just a guy, like a dummy or whatever, a mannequin. But and it goes on forever. He's just sitting there throwing him around. I'm like, holy cow. It's amazing.
It really is. It's mind-boggling that this movie didn't get more attention at some point, because it is just so insane. I mean, this is really one of the best bad movies ever. So good because it's so bad.
So bad. It's funny. Before I watched this yesterday, I actually watched the Blu-ray of Pieces beforehand, and Pieces is a pretty gory film too. But then I put this on, and I was like, this might even be gorier than that.
Yeah, it's a toss-up. It really is.
Oh boy! So there you have it, everybody. A couple Bigfoot,
couple real gems there.
Yep. Legend of Boggy Creek and Night of the Demons. So if you haven't seen either one of them and you're interested at all in the whole Bigfoot mythology or mythos, whatever you want to call it, check them both out. They're both worthwhile for completely different reasons, though, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
So there you have it. So stay tuned for upcoming episodes of the Monsters Den. We will be joining back up with Rich Catino either later this week or next week for some Animals Attack horror films, right? So
Should be good.
I think we're each going to do a double feature of that, double or triple feature. We'll see how it goes. I've got 2. Rich has got 2 picked out. I don't know how many you picked out for that episode, Chris, but
I got tons.
Yeah,
I love that. I love Animals Attack.
Yeah. So no shortage of those classics, right? So that'll be our next Monsters Den episode. So stay tuned for that. For Chris Allo, I am Pete Pardo. We'll see you all real soon. Have a good one. I'll see you all tomorrow night for the Hudson Valley Squares, right? So stay tuned for that.